Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's May 16th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and this is going to wrap it up for the week. No chart lessons on Friday, so it won't be back again until Monday. The uptrend just kind of continued today. Early on, I would have been once we bounced here right at the 8:30 open. I would have looked for a measured move up, but you see we got that, and then we continued to work a little higher. There's actually a little spike in channel up here that you could have played later on. This is tough to want to trade because you're bouncing off this upper trend channel, and you actually got a little overshoot. But if you try to look for the other pattern, there's definitely one here, and you get a break and a couple of legs up, and you actually get one more push up before it sells off. And this is a strong trend. When you start to see all these little bars that just keep going up, and then you go sideways a little bit and go up, and sideways a little bit and go up, and you don't really get any big corrections. That's a strong trend. It doesn't look that strong up in here, but it's still a really strong trend. And you can see the EMA is still pointing up. Everything is pretty much consistently above the EMA. We finally got a little break and close here, so that's telling you, hey, we're probably going to come to an end before too much longer. But it continues to just push higher, and then finally it reverses, and we're trending down, and that takes us into the 2 o'clock hour. So. Not a lot of trades today because early on you don't really get a lot of options in here. And once you figure out that this is a pretty strong trend, especially if you see this secondary, the little brown, there's a spike up and we went to a channel. If you see that, um, pretty much what you have to do is just take every little correction because you're not going to get any big corrections. I mean, we couldn't even get back to the midline of the two-tiered blue channel. And that's telling you the market's pretty strong. It did break pretty quickly here, but you've got another little pattern working here that we'll talk about when we get to it. So, and then you got to be really extremely careful about going short in here. And so until we started to prove that we were really headed lower, you had to be careful on the shorts as well. So actually a little short-term channel right down through there. But anyway, let's back out. We'll talk about the trades, and there's not many today. So, and again, like we've talked about the last few days, you could probably, if you recognize, all these little small bars and lots of little dojis and stems, it just keeps marching higher with very shallow corrections. If you recognize that, anything that pulls back to a key entry point. Okay, I'm sorry. I had somebody come in the door and they interrupted me, and now I can't remember where we were. But we were just talking about these small. You're just not going to get many corrections, and if you get a slight pullback to any kind of key entry point, you just about have to enter. Otherwise, you're just going to kind of sit here and watch it, just like we kind of had to do right here. And it's hard to do that, but sometimes it's what you got to do. But once you recognize that, this is a relatively strong trend. Um, I would try to take every pullback. And of course, we measured the first leg here, and I would look for a secondary leg. And you can see we really pretty much got that to the tick, and we backed off a little bit, but then we kept going higher. So I would have also measured this leg and look for a measured leg. And you can see that puts us up to here. We didn't quite get there, but we got close. So, but that's the way I would have done that. And when we didn't make it, that tells you we're probably going to sell off a little strong. We have a little stronger sell-off, which you can see we did here. Um, so, but anyway, let's talk about the trades, and we'll wrap up this week, and be back again Monday. But anyway, we had this first leg up here. There's really two legs in that leg, but you can see, and then you have a two-legged correction here. This is really all one leg, and then the second leg from here to here. And we didn't quite get a measured leg, but there's a trend channel. If you drew this one off the highs and drug it down, you would see it coming across here. Actually, I just draw it off those and drag it down. And then when we started bouncing here, I'd be looking for that channel. And you can see the midline fits pretty well in there. But 7 o'clock came right in here. We'd actually already made all this and we were correcting here. 7 o'clock came right along in here. This is real tempting, but I'd probably want to wait on the lower high or second entry, and we didn't get all that till down here, and you just can't go short right into all that support right there. So when this broke higher and turned down, I'm going to be real leery about going short there. If you want to be super aggressive, you might have a sell stop right here, but there's too big a chance it goes a tick or two and then bounces. And you see it did drop on down and bounce. I'd be, once it broke through here, especially if you'd drawn this trend line up here and drug it down, then I'd be looking for a bounce in here somewhere. And that's a second entry long. Notice that new high, first entry right there, and then you come on down second. So there's really two legs right there, and there's a little two-legged bounce right there at the trend line where that support is. So you may enter there. It's better to wait on a higher low. That comes here, not a super great signal bar. Then we push on up through the EMA, pull back, and we kind of confirm that trend line. We really confirmed it here. This just kind of gives you a little more confirmation that that trend line's probably in play, and that's right there at the support resistance. So if we break above that, we're probably going to go higher. It does pull back again here, and you could look at this as a double bottom, so first entry, second entry. So you may consider that a failed second entry short, but when it broke higher again, you may add on there, you may enter there if you hadn't entered yet. But then we pushed on up and pulled back again and made another higher low. We're getting a little close to the highs up here, but when it pulled back again like that and trapped people, I would assume we're probably going to try to make this next leg like this right here that I showed you a minute ago. So, and that is really right off of kind of a key entry point there. Of course, you may not have had that yet. If you drew it off the top and just moved it over, it fits, which is what I did, and I just never copied it and put the other side over there. But you can see that coming off those highs right up through there. And I just copied that and drug it over like so. And it fits perfectly. So we move on up, and there's actually, we tried to go lower here. We get a break. Not a very good signal bar. It is off that midline, and you could have had this by now. All those bounces, and it does fit at the top. So if the signal bar was a little better and you had a little more room to this double top, I'd say yeah, but I'm still a little leery of that one. And of course up here it's just going sideways, same thing, but now it's starting to look like a really strong trend with all those little small bars that just keep marching higher, and your corrections are very flat, and this really kind of proves it right here. When we could never get below that all the way across there, that tells you the market can't sell off. It can't even really correct. I mean, those are very shallow corrections. So when you made these lows here, and then you got one test, two tests, and a nice little small bullish bar, I like going long there, especially since it's right off the EMA. And notice how it takes on off there. And this one is really tempting too. You could probably argue for that one to be green, but I'm going to tell you why I didn't mark it green and why I don't like it. Because we've got this darker blue channel, and we've got a big overshoot, and so there's a good chance we're going lower here. Even though this thing's been marching higher and there's been very shallow corrections, and this is another one, another very shallow correction. So I'd want to see a little more evidence, but notice how we push back up and we're coming across here, and we try to go lower once, we try to go lower twice, and by that time it's obvious this brown trend line's in play. And so I like going long there because it's pretty obvious this is a strong trend, and I was really hoping it would continue, but then we finally get a little bigger correction, we get a break of this. We still get a second entry long, and once again we bounce off that support resistance line there. And that's a nice bullish bar on a second entry. I'm going to take that one too because we're probably going to at least test that high. This thing just keeps marching. And once again, this is just kind of a little repeat pattern of this, a little smaller one. But We make that low, we test it once, we test it twice. The reason I'm a little leery of this one is we've already had the break, and we've got 2 legs up, but we're still above the EMA, we're still going flat, but we got 2 little matching highs, and if we'd have broke above right there, I really would have liked that bar. But when you get a second one that couldn't get above it, that's a little bit concerning. But it still meets our criteria, and it's still probably worth taking a chance on. Actually would have moved that down. That's where I had that originally, right there, and then I would have moved it down to that last close, and you can see we still closed. Everything's still closed above that more support, and then off it goes for one more push up. And this is the concern about entering here, is it may not get that high. It may just go up a few ticks and then turn down, but it continues on, because every time it takes off, people start buying. People that recognize this is a very strong trend. But it's finally played out. We're coming back, and we don't even get a bounce off this trend line. We come up a little short, and then we push below it. We come back, and you can see it looks like it's going to take off there, but it doesn't, and it turns back down again. And once you made this, and then you got this correction, I'd look for a measured move. Measure this like so. I'd measure this one first and then come over here, and you see that's pretty much a measured move, but I'd go ahead and measure in case it goes further. You'd have a secondary target like that right there, and you can see we didn't quite make that one. So I really thought the thinking is that that's the first break of this dark channel here, but we did have an overshoot but way back here. So we could just reverse, and that's what happened. We tried a couple times here for a retest, but it just reversed. And so you got to be real careful about getting long. There's not really a good setup here on my chart. If you had a good setup and took that one, notice you got a little trap there. It broke lower and makes a little double bottom, and another break higher there. It would have worked, but it's not a good setup on my chart, so I didn't take it. But if you had a good signal bar right here with that little dip below, I'd probably take that trade just to ride it back to the EMA, or see if it rides back and test this trend line. But then it turns down again, and you had to be really careful about getting short in here. This is really tempting, but there's not enough room back to that trend line, and especially the fact that we haven't had a break of this one. Even though you had this overshoot, we continued a long time after that. So you just got to be careful about getting short. We finally start that next leg down, and you get a second entry short right there. Of course, this is more sideways now, so I'm not really looking at the second entry. I'm just looking at a little small bar basically off the EMA and off that resistance that gives you room to scalp out there. And that's why I like that trade. Not because it's a second entry short. And then you get a little long down here, but now you got to be careful about going long, because you got a clear channel here, and there's been no break of it yet. We do end up making a break here, but notice what happens. We're moving up. You get a close outside, move to a new high, and then you really get a lower high. If this was just side by side with equal bottoms, I'd probably say skip this one, but there's a little lower high there, so I kind of like that one. You're probably going to try to test this low at a minimum, but it ends up shooting on down and trying to make, from that point I would measure this whole thing, look for a measured move, and you can see we went a little bit further than that. That would have given you a nice target regardless. And that takes you in the 2 o'clock hour. So it was a little bit light in the afternoon. I mean, it was really a little bit light all day. Consider we had such a strong trend. There's not a lot of setups here. And the thing you got to remember, is I'm going to say this one more time, because this always is tough for people to see. You got to learn to recognize this type of trend is a very strong trend. When you see lots of, let me back out where you can see this. But look at all the bars, just little small bars with stems, dojis, all in there on both stems on both sides, meaning, and not very big bars, and the corrections are very shallow. And you can see these on the way down too, same type of trends. and it just keeps climbing higher and higher. The corrections are very shallow. Not many very big bars, lots of stems, lots of little doji looking things, and it just keeps climbing with very shallow. When you see that, that's a very strong trend, and you can't be real choosy because you won't get a lot of corrections. And so whatever you see there that looks like a good entry at a key entry point, like here, this is really hard to do up here because you're not even back to the EMA, much less back to a midline or back to the trend line. But there is a spike in channel here, and if you see that, you can see prices bouncing off that and playing that trend line all the way up. And so you just have to try to find your little smaller secondary trends and trend channels and your channels, your congestion. I mean, this is really a range, but it's so small we'd probably call that congestion. Which is, in congestion, don't confuse that. Congestion is just a very tiny range with only a few bars in it. So they're still the same thing. They still work exactly the same. And so anyway, that's about all I can say about today. And I think that's going to wrap up the week. I'm going to probably quit early tomorrow. I'm probably going to come in and trade an hour or two and quit early tomorrow and start my weekend early. But I hope you had a good week. Again, we'll be back on Monday and start another week, but I'm done for today, done for this week. Hope you had a good trading day, good trading week. We'll be back Monday. I'm done. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.